Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is News and Week in Review, where we're going to go ahead and take a look at a few pieces of news in the board game world this past week. We're going to take a look at the videos I filmed this past week, some of the games I played, a topic, all the usual things, and timestamps and links to everything down below. But let's go ahead and start off with CGE Czech Games Edition, our first piece of news, where they are putting out, I believe it's coming out July 11th, which is like, a few days ago. They're coming out with a board game documentary on how to make board games, or something along those lines. I don't know the full topic or scope of what it is, but I do know that they've had various, YouTube videos on the manufacturing process, on assembly lines, and what they make every day that I've personally found very fascinating. So I'm looking forward to watching whatever documentary thing that they put out. But I don't have a link to it, unfortunately, right now. I may have a link. Check the links. I probably have a link for it by the time you're watching this. But either way, that's Czech Games Edition, continuing to put out informative content in the board game space. Then from there, we have El Grande Cheese, sort of. El Grande basically is coming back with a reprint, or at least from what I can see is coming back with a reprint. And at the very least, we have Lucky Duck putting out the Polish reprint for the game. So this is not, I don't know exactly what the full plans for everything around it are, but I believe there's going to be a full reprint. And this is the Polish reprint, which may or may not have similar art, I don't know. But El Grande is a fantastic game. I am fascinated by the square box in this one. El Grande has always been in like a much larger rectangular box. A square box just seems off for it, but why not? I guess why can't it work? I don't really know. But either way, El Grande is a fantastic game. I have it in my collection. One of my favorite games to play. My only real struggle with it is I find it plays best at 5, and that's a player count that I don't play as often nowadays. But when I do, El Grande is one of the first games that comes to mind. Then we have, speaking of reprints over here, we have classic board game Tigris and Euphrates is set to make a return at Essen. I believe at Essen. I think that's the plan. Tigris and Euphrates from Reina Knizia, which has had like 5 or 6 versions so far, and constantly seems out of print, and constantly is sought after. There's also Yellow and Yangtze, and then, darn it, what's the name of the one that was after Yellow and Yangtze? Launched on GameFound. Oh my gosh, it's going to bother me. So, we had Tigris and Euphrates, we had Yellow and Yangtze, and then we have the GameFound reprint that was basically Yellow and Yangtze, but with a different name. Oh my gosh, this is gonna drive me nuts. It was like a short name too, I think. I can't spend all day on this. We're gonna move on. The Tigris and Euphrates has lots of versions of the game, and to me personally, Tigris and Euphrates is the best version of it. I've played Yellow and Yangtze. I've played that other one whose name is escaping me at the moment. Not Icky. No, Icky's a different game. Either way, Tigris Euphrates to me is the best version of the system, and a phenomenal game, and I highly encourage you to seek it out if you have the opportunity to do so, especially if there's a reprint, which makes it affordably priced as opposed to what it is right now. And that should be launching at Essen. There's no art for the new version. This is an art for an older version, so ignore that. But that's what we have over there. Then we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre Slaughterhouse, and a drastic shift from the 2 Euro games we just talked about. We have Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming from Funko Games. This actually looks pretty cool. This is a 1 versus many game. The production, the miniatures, the art. Look what your brother did. I've never actually watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, unfortunately. But overall, look at those dice. Those dice look pretty cool. I do like the dice. Again, art, production, 1 versus many gameplay. Funko Games in general have had a lot of games, and some of them are really good games, and some of them are okay games, and everything's going to be situational and personal to whatever your personal preferences are. But in this case, we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I hope to try out at some point in some way. But that's coming to you from Funko Games. Should be launching, I believe, soon, September 2023. Then we have the Starry Rift. This is not so much like a news, it's like an actually old thing. Starry Rift is an expansion for New Frontiers that was heavily delayed by COVID, unfortunately, and it seems like it will finally be coming soon, so take that with a healthy grain of salt until it shows up at your doorstep. Not a Kickstarter, it's a, retail edition of the game. This is an expansion to New Frontiers, which is a Race for the Galaxy universe board game, and yeah, I believe, if I recall correctly, very similar gameplay to Puerto Rico, if I recall correctly, but I never actually played New Frontiers. I have played Puerto Rico, I have played San Juan, I have played Race for the Galaxy. I have not played New Frontiers, which is like kind of completes the trifecta of card-based, whatever. If you know, you know. That sounded so vague. That didn't meant to sound vague. Anyways, we have over on Dicebreaker. Gloomhaven Digital is coming to Nintendo Switch later this year. This is actually a piece of news from a few weeks back, but I think I completely forgot to mention it. So for those of you who are interested in this, Gloomhaven Digital is coming to Nintendo Switch later this year. The graphics look, lesser than what you expect from a PC game. Just having played the PC Gloomhaven Digital, this graphical shot looks like a downgrade. But again, that would make sense. It doesn't look that bad of a downgrade. But Gloomhaven Digital, it's, I highly recommend Gloomhaven Digital. I think it is the best way to play Gloomhaven. I think Gloomhaven in general is a complex system that has a lot of setup and teardown and things that get in the way of the experience. And I don't think any way is perfect, because they all have their downsides. But I think my personal preference, it likely leans towards Gloomhaven Digital. And my baseline is I've played Gloomhaven physical, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. I've played Crimson Scales physical once or twice, and I've played Frosthaven physical, I don't know, 15 times. And I'm not including Jaws of the Lion in that mix, because Jaws of the Lion is a totally different experience when you're playing it physically. From there, I think if I was choosing between Jaws of the Lion digital or physical, I would choose Jaws of the Lion. But from the others, digital or physical, I think I would choose digital, despite the fact that there's pros and cons in both directions. In fact, I have a full video on my channel of talking about the pros and cons of Gloomhaven digital versus physical, and which one I prefer and why. And there's a differing opinion in there as well. Meg did the video with me. And so, yeah, I prefer digital and recommend digital. So the fact that you have another way to play it is not a bad thing at all. Then we have over on BackerKit, launching later this year, we have Defenders of the Realm making a reprint. Legends never die, they are retold, and apparently redrawn as well, with entirely new art for the game. This is from Richard Lanius. It's a game that very much has a pandemic kind of flow to it, as you have these like cities being overwhelmed in the game, and you have to try to take over. Richard Lanius is famous for designing Arkham Horror, if I recall correctly. That's right, that is Richard Lanius, isn't it? I'm 99% sure. Is it him? I'm 99.999% sure that he's done Arkham Horror. Also a bunch of other games, including Sentinels of the Multiverse Freedom 5, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, this is going to be launching on BackerKit later this year. Defenders of the Realm is an interesting one. At one point, it was an incredibly popular game, but it's not one I hear a lot about these days. So I'm very curious to see how this one does. Bringing back older popular titles is always fascinating to see where that popularity stuck and where it didn't stick as quite as much. The art overall, I'm not sure about. Like the goblins, I'm not really into right now. Versus the dragon, I think is pretty cool. So I'll have to wait and see to find more bits and pieces. I was never a huge fan of the original, but the original was fine. And the question is, where does this one lie out? And this is coming to you from Greater Than Games, by the way. That's going to be launching in late 2023. Then we have over on AllPlay over here. We have AllPlay launching their Jasmine table. That's going to be coming out, very shortly. I believe July 11th. So a few days ago, shortly. That kind of shortly. But they have a fantastic thing I highly recommend taking a look at if you missed it. They basically gave away a entire game room makeover. They had a bunch of people enter, and they chose a family who won a game room makeover. And they kind of filmed and documented that journey to show you what their game looks like with shelves and a game table. I don't know if it will or won't be the Jasmine, but I believe either the Jasper or the Jasmine, I don't remember which one it is. They have a $500 game table, if I'm not mistaken. Make sure to keep your eyes peeled for that, because $500 game tables are not the most common thing you see, so it's good to have options at your disposal. And then lastly, we're gonna have a topic of lastly we have another news piece of it. Numbers-based board games make children better at math. This is a study done on generic, playing games. There's a study done on kids that was between 3 to 9 years old, if I'm not mistaken. A peer-reviewed study published in the academic journal Early Years. Basically, they showed that children 3 to 9 years old, if they played math-based games or numerical board games, they have a much easier time learning and practicing numbers, performing around 52% higher, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why I said around 52%. I should either say around 50% or just say 52% higher. That's, specifically what it is. But either way, additionally, in 32% of cases, the children who played the games gained better results than those who did not. So their skills improved by 52%, and in 32% of cases, they gain better results. I'm not entirely sure I follow that, but I didn't read the study. I'm just referencing the article. I will say I read the article enough to know that Jenga is not a numerical-based board game, but hey, it's a picture that we can show, so it fits, right? Let's go with that. I don't actually care, I'm just being snarky. But anyways, that's basically a little study, talking about playing just generic games. And it reminds me that once upon a time, when I was first getting into the hobby, I remember reading an article about how playing board games was associated with a longer study. Playing board games was associated with a lower risk of Alzheimer's or other dementia-based things. Understand that that's board games in the category of Scrabble and chess and checkers and things that are more often done in studies. There have been fewer studies than you might imagine being done on the amount of people who played Game of Thrones, the board game, and what their long-term effects of that are. So it's usually based on more popular games, but the principle is still sound. The principle of applying strategic decision-making to a tabletop presence in front of you does likely extrapolate outwards to a wide degree of things, not necessarily Cards Against Humanity, but likely things adjacent to the strategic decision-making aspect of things. So play board games with your kids, which lends itself nicely to the topic of the week, which was totally not planned, by the way. Genuinely, I wrote down the topic of the week before even finding that news piece to add, so this just tangents nicely to it. But first, coffee, because it's morning right now for me. Might be morning for you too, depending on when you watch this video. Anyways, topic of the week is playing with your family, which is something I've talked about before. I've talked about it in the week in review. I've done full videos in it, but it's always about the balance of playing games with your family. That depending on who you are, and depending on what your family consists of, and I'm specifically thinking kids right now. So I mean, I said family, but specifically I'm thinking kids, where speaking for myself, and I'll speak for myself in this conversation, but I find that it's always a balance of playing the games I want to play versus spending time with my kids playing games because I like spending time with my kids and I like playing games. And the problem is sometimes if I want to play something like, The Witcher Old World, my kids likely aren't playing that with me, at least yet. One day perhaps, but they're not. And so I might have to make a decision. Do I want to play Trailblazers, and I'm able to include a few of my kids, or do I want to play The Witcher Old World, which is a game I really, really want to play, but then I have to do so at the cost of playing games with my kids. And I think as much as possible, it's important to prioritize spending time with your kids, especially doing something you love. Not forcing the thing you love on them. Definitely not that. That's a big no-no. Do not push your kids. If you want, the best way for your kids to resent board games when they're older, constantly push them to play games with them when they want to read a book or play with their friends or play with Lego. If you constantly shove your hobby onto them, they're not going to love it. They'll resent it. But if there's an opportunity to spend time with them, that they get to bond with you, doing something that's enjoyable, and a big one is you don't have to play games that you don't enjoy, but you certainly shouldn't make them play games they don't enjoy. Give them the opportunity to find the games that you both enjoy, the games you can experience. I've done videos on best games to play with your kids multiple times. I have another one coming up in a week or two, somewhere along there. But there's so many incredible games you can play with your family that I, like, speaking for myself, I enjoy them and they enjoy them, and you find that overlap from Can't Stop to Cat Lover to, Forbidden Island to Leo the Lion to Machikoro. Machikoro I'm a little less a fan of, but it's okay. It's fine. There's so many games that you can find that overlap on, where you both enjoy it, you both get something from the experience, and you both have a good time. And it's so impactful and so key to development in general, to just developing your relationship with them, to developing their skills at math, apparently, or any number of lack of Alzheimer's-related diseases. It's not always the easiest, because you often have things going on in your life, whether it's work, whether it's, in my case, work is play, whether it's work, whether it's playing board games with your friends, whether it's video games, whether it's anything, whatever's happening in your life, it's so easy to deprioritize, to mean well, and to not spend the time with them. But it's such a good way to engage with them. My kids love board games. They all, to various degrees, mind you, but they definitely enjoy the hobby, and they play games, they play my kinds of games, as opposed to, standard games. They play my kinds of games with themselves, with their friends. My daughter will have 4 friends over and then spend the whole day having me pick and choose games that I think they'll like, and then half the time teaching it to them when my daughter doesn't really remember the rules, or she's not the best teacher. She's great at a lot of things. She's not the best game teacher. And it's fun to see that. But that takes time and patience. And sometimes playing a little bit of Unicorns in the Clouds with your 3-year-old, because it's not really a game, but at least they'll understand the sequence and flow and understand how things happen and the cause and effect of game rules and mechanics. I forgot to say, when they're younger, you kind of do have to pick things that aren't fun, because that's the only thing that they can actually really learn from. They're not going to learn how to play a board game by playing, Trogdor. They'll learn to play a board game by playing Unicorns in the Clouds or Candyland, a game that has no decisions but does have rules and game flow. That's a good place to start, unfortunately, because do not do Candyland. Do Unicorns in the Clouds. It's so much better. Or Glitter Luck Unicorn or something like that. That's a German title, I don't remember. Prioritize it when you can, and you won't always have the option to do so. Before you know it, they're going to be older, and their opinions will be more formed, more certain. They might get to a point where they don't really want to spend time with you anymore, or as much, because it's not cool and they have other friends, they have other interests. Turn them into geeks early and fast, before the other factions get to them. I think it's important to spend time with your kids in the hobby that you love. And I think sometimes that means giving up a game night with your friends, or setting up that solo game you're about to dive into for the whole evening, and just prioritizing a bit of quality time building with them. And then, the last thing I'll say on this topic is, if they don't like board games, because sometimes you'll have kids who just don't like them, find another thing to spend time with them on. Find that other hobby. Find that other interest. Board games are fun and they're excellent and they're a great way to build and develop relationships, and I'm a huge fan of them. If it's not clear from the channel, I'm a huge fan of board games. But if you have a kid who doesn't like them, if you have a kid who likes to read, who likes to play sports, who likes to whatever, video games, whatever it is that they like, find ways to bond with your children. Find ways to develop those bonds, to build them up, and to just have relationships that will last a very, very long time. It's worth it. In any case, with that, let's go ahead and move on to the weekend review, starting off with the games I played. The games I played are the following, and as usual, this is a smattering of some of the games that I played this past week, not a full breakdown of everything, just a few of the games that I played in the past 7 days. Starting off with Lucky Numbers. Lucky Numbers is a fast-paced, quick and easy game, which you basically have these little clovers you're placing down to your board in order to ascend to the left and to the right as you go through. So you're trying to build a bit of an arc, but everything has to move across, everything has to move down, you have to make that work. And I enjoyed it. I think it's quick and fun, but I also don't really recommend it unless you're really looking for the most basic of board games. It's very, very basic as far as what it does. In fact, it's not bad, speaking of the last topic, it's really not bad for teaching kids or playing with kids. If my kids wanted to play that and enjoy that, it's great. It's very low decision space, a lot of logic, it's a numerical-based board game, it's got a lot going for it as far as what it does. The reason I don't personally recommend it, despite enjoying it, is I find that if I was going to recommend that, I would recommend you get Welcome to the Moon instead, which has 8 missions in it. It's a roll and write game. It's based on Welcome to the Perfect Home, Welcome to Your Perfect Home, and Welcome to the Moon. One of the missions kind of has that arcing effect of having to move up and across, and it does so within a more interesting ecosystem. So if you're looking for something that distills that one component into a lighter game for kids, yes, I recommend Lucky Numbers. But otherwise, I'd recommend Welcome to the Moon or Keystone North America, which has a similar concept. It's not always increasing or decreasing. Sorry, it's not always increasing. It is increasing or decreasing, so it gives you a little more decision space. And again, a lot more decision space as far as what you do and how you do it. But Keystone North America has the same kind of puzzle. So in both cases, I'd recommend the games that I think take that mechanic and extrapolate it to a much more interesting thing. I did enjoy Lucky Numbers, but it's very, very specific singular mechanic distilled. And again, speaking of spending time with your kids, Via Magica is another one I want to highlight this week. Via Magica is one of my kids' favorite games, and it's a game I really enjoy. And it's simple, and it's stupid, and it just does the job. Via Magica is effectively bingo. It's based on Augustus, or at one point called Rise of Augustus, a game that effectively has you pulling things from a bag and then placing down resources on cards to earn these portals, which will then earn you more portals and give you abilities and give you scoring mechanics. So it's basically bingo as you draw tokens from a bag to place them on the matching element in Via Magica. But it's got phenomenal art, very easy to teach gameplay, enough decision space that there is strategy to it, enough combining of different portals for their abilities or scoring multipliers that there really is a decision space around how the game plays out, and there's powers and abilities, amazing art, plays in like 20 minutes, and is an accessible game that gives you that just, again, easy enough. I played this game with a 5-year-old, and they all understand it and have fun with it and know exactly what's happening. Well, not necessarily exactly. Sometimes they don't understand all the abilities, but they can be taught the abilities and learn them and then pick up the best way to work within the system. So overall, Via Magica, fantastic game. I've talked about it before. This is just an older game I happened to play this past week, and so I was like, you know what? I haven't talked about Via Magica in a while, and I think it's a great game. And then lastly, I'm going to focus on Rogue Angels. Rogue Angels is an upcoming Kickstarter project that actually I believe launched last year and had to cancel and relaunch. Now, full disclaimer, they are doing paid coverage on the Board Game Co. channel, but I had a chance to play this one as well. In general, the paid coverage is, paid previews are done by Meg right now. Devin was doing it, but Devin took a job at Lucky Duck, so he's still on the channel, but he's shifting away from the paid preview content. Meg has taken over the paid preview content, so she is doing a paid preview for Rogue Angel, so just full disclaimer. But I had a chance to dive into it. As I was being taught, I had a chance to dive into it, play the first scenario. I will not be covering it right now. I may review it down the road when it comes down to retail, but I will say I very much enjoyed my diving into the game. It's a very simple yet rewarding system of placing cards down and having them time out. A little similar to Oathsworn in the way you have cards like, slowly come back into play, but also very different in terms of the, if nothing else, the simplicity of it. It's more simple, but also takes away a little of the strategic aspects that Oathsworn has. But meanwhile, you're exploring this narrative-based campaign. I believe it's 40 missions is roughly a campaign, and has branching arcs and pathways. So it reminded me very strongly of Tanares Adventures in the way you have 100 missions at your disposal, but you're only actually playing through 40 of those missions in a game, and you have branching decisions within those missions as well. So it really just gives you a lot of replayability, lots of characters to play through as. My biggest concern with any of these games is always the same, which is, congratulations, you're fun for 2 hours. Does that mean you're also fun for the next, I don't know, much longer than 2 hours? Because these games it's offering 40 to 80 hours of gameplay. So the fact that it was fun for 2 hours does not in any way mean that it's going to be fun at the 5-hour mark or the 10-hour mark or the 20-hour mark. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I both like it while knowing that sometimes these games I like and then play for 40 hours and they're great, and other times these games I like and I play for 5 hours and I'm ready to move on from them. So I don't know where Rogue Angels will land. All I'll say is that I really enjoyed my play of it, and I'm looking forward to reviewing this one down the road. Many of the previews we cover on the channel, I don't make time to review or cover or look at myself. But sometimes there is an extra level of interest, and I definitely was interested in this one, so I hopped onto the TTS to learn the game as well, and very much enjoyed what I saw while needing to see more to understand where the game ends up. From there, we're going to move on to the weekend review, starting off with this past Saturday. This past Saturday, I reviewed Mariposas. This is actually an older review, filmed this a while ago. Mariposas is an okay game, but I enjoyed it, but I don't need to dive into it more. It's a fun system of moving butterflies around the board as you try to optimize around where you land and how you gather things. And it's simple and to the point, but it's a little bit more vague and aimless. It's not like a direct aspect. It's kind of just like fly and collect stuff. And it works. It's fun, but it didn't particularly stick with me. It's an okay game. Then later on Saturday, I reviewed Coloma. Coloma from Final Frontier Games, as well as the expansion New Prospects. I gave that a 3.5 out of 5. I like Coloma, I enjoy it, but it's not one that I need to hold on to. It's a good Euro game, but there's a lot of other better Euro games, at least for myself. I think the production is fantastic. I like the concepts of the gameplay. The expansion New Prospects definitely enhances some aspects of the game and cleans out some aspects that just makes it either some areas more balanced, some areas more interesting. So I do enjoy the expansion New Prospects, but ultimately Coloma is a 3.5 out of 5 to me. A good game, but not necessarily a great one. Then we have Sunday. Sunday, I did a video for the top 15 Gencon games to buy. Top 15, at least as of when I filmed it, because I'm sure there's more. And also top 15, obviously, based on my own opinion. But these are 15 games you might want to keep your eyes out for as far as games to pick up. Although in general, strong disclaimer, I usually recommend not buying games at conventions. I usually recommend buying them later when you get them cheaper and not pay these larger prices and have to deal with transportation and all those things. That said, if you are specifically looking to spend money at conventions, these are 15 games that I think are more interesting, that are potentially worthy of your interest and attention. And some of them are games I've played that I really recommend. Some of them are games I've heard good things about. Some of them are games I barely know anything about, and for some reason they managed to make their way into my top 15 games to buy. Monday we had 2 back or not to back, possibly the shortest 2 back or not to back we've had in a very, very long time. The problem is I'm missing next week's 2 back or not to back. As of right now, when you're watching this, I'm currently at Level Up Retreat, which means I am unable to film the 2 back or not to back this coming Monday, because I'll still be at the retreat on Sunday, and I won't have a chance to even try to film it until Monday morning, which is too late to try to get one of those done. But because of that, I did not skip last week's, even though it's a very light week. There were like 4 or 5 GameFound projects, a single Kickstarter project. There's like nothing this past week, nothing new at least. So maybe there's some updates and things I don't remember. But past that, this coming week will not have a 2 back or not to back. Instead, we're going to have we'll talk about it later today. We'll talk about it later. But anyways, 2 back or not to back. Just going over a bunch of GameFound campaigns. And again, some others, but mostly GameFound. There was like Coloma, this Planet Unknown. Speaking of Coloma, Planet Unknown, and some stuff like that. Tales of Evil. Either way, that was 2 back or not to back. A very, very, very short one. Then on Tuesday we had a bunch of videos as usual. We had Stonespine Architects, a review of Stonespine Architects, which will be launching this week. That's coming to you from Thunderworks Games, and gives you you're building out a catacombs or exploring a catacombs as you place down different cards, trying to optimize your score across a variety of factors. If you like games like Cartographers, then I think Stonespine Architects will be right up your alley. I give that a 4 to 5. Definitely enjoy it. Curious to see how it holds up over time, but definitely enjoy it. The only main problem is it's kind of fighting against games like Cartographers, and will it hold up? I don't know, but I for right now at least I still enjoy it. Then we have later on Tuesday. We have a preview for Ding Dong. Professor Meg did a preview of Ding Dong, a Halloween-themed game of knocking on people's doors, trying to prank various older people in their homes and scaring people away with decorations. It's a light little party game about trying to just match up your decorations and scare kids away and collect the most points by the end of the game. Plays in like 15 minutes. Then we have later on Tuesday, lastly on Tuesday, we had a review for Scram. Scram is a game coming to you from Bezier Games that has you just trying to yell Scram and scare people away. You're trying to get rid of your cards as much as possible in the game to have the lowest possible totals in the game as you play through it. It's a fun little game. It's based on like Rat-a-Tat-Cat. I shouldn't say it's based on. It feels similar to Rat-a-Tat-Cat, but Scram is delightfully fun in a way that feels like it almost shouldn't be. I enjoyed it despite myself almost. Like it's a fun game of just. It's not a great game. It really isn't, but I enjoyed myself. So does that make sense? Take it for what you will. On Wednesday we had a few videos going up. We had a Should You Back It for Gloomhaven, the Gloomhaven Festival for over on back here, talking about all the various things. There's a lot of stuff to go into over there. The campaign is, I mean, it's doing well comparatively speaking, but it's also doing poorly comparatively speaking, depending how you look at it. But overall, lots of things available there, from Buttons and Bugs, they're effectively their tiny epic Gloomhaven, to Gloomhaven RPG, to Frosthaven RPG. There's a lot of decisions and choices available for you, and that is a should you back it on Gloomhaven Festival over on back here. Later on Tuesday, we had a Galactus unboxing. Unboxing the Galactus the Devourer from Command Games. The giant the giant model arrived this past week for me, and so I unboxed it, because why wouldn't I? Not the most interesting unboxing. There'll be a more interesting one when we actually have the full Marvel Zombies arrive, but if you want to just see a giant purple miniature, we have that for you. Then, not miniature, not bigature. Lastly, on Wednesday, we had a Tanares gameplay, diving into Tanares gameplay number 2, whatever you want to call it. We had a tutorial, we had the first gameplay, then we had the second one. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was like something camp or village. It was some terrible name of the name of the whatever. Either way, Tanares Adventures. Diving more into Tanares Adventures. This is part of a sponsored gameplay I'm doing with Dragori Games, where I'm playing through the entire campaign. But if you want to see the second arc, the video is going to be dropping like every 2 weeks or so. I hope to have special guests in some of them, but for right now, Tanares Adventures. That was on Wednesday. That was that last video on Wednesday. Then Thursday, we have 10 things I love that are not board games. This is a video I filmed a few weeks back, and it's basically talking about 10 things I love that are not board games. I'm going to add an 11th for you over here, because the 11th is the Ring doorbell. Recently got a Ring doorbell because of Prime Day, and I feel like I should have gotten a Ring doorbell a long time ago. I never thought I cared about a Ring doorbell, but I love my Ring doorbell, just so you have an understanding. Every time someone drops off a package, I know. Every time someone walks up thingy, I know. It's just so useful. I get a little ding on my phone, like, hey, package just got dropped off. It's so useful. Like, as someone who gets a lot of packages in board games, I never have to check my front step anymore. I just know whether somebody was there. Incredibly cool. I love the Ring doorbell. It's just, I mean, it's all board game related, obviously, but I'm a huge fan of the Ring doorbell, so that's going to be my number 11 for the list. But past that, 10 things I love that aren't board games, focusing on a bunch of things that I really enjoy and get value from that are not board games. Some are lightly board game related. There are no people in the video. Specifically, I made it very clear in the beginning, I'm like, these are not including people. Not including people. I'm saving that and just doing things. That's what we're doing here. But from books to mattresses to my I don't know, my JBL flip. There's a bunch of things that I like and get value from that are not board games, and I just thought I'd share, because why in the world not? And then Friday we have games that are what was this? A video I did with Chris from Legion of Games. This is, I can't remember the exact title of it, but something along the lines of 10 games that are milking the FOMO. We each brought to the table 10 games that we think are milking your FOMO, that are preying on just how much you want. And to be very clear, I think you can be milking the FOMO while also putting out good stuff that I want, or just providing a good market or service or whatever it is. But I think there are certainly times where games are taking advantage of the fact that there's a popular IP, a popular system, a popular game, and the companies continue to put out more and more and more content for that game, because you'll buy it and they keep making it. Again, in many cases, I'm happy about it. Dominion's a great example. I want all the Dominion. I will take all the Dominion. It's so easy to integrate. Why in the world not? But there are other times where the FOMO pushes a little too hard and it can push me away from the experience. These are 10 games that I'm looking at the FOMO, with a few overlaps between the two of us. And then on today, that brings us to today. Today we have a few things. We're going to have a review for Rear Window from Funko Games going up later today, as well as a review for Chronicles of Abel going up as well. Both reviews, you can check those out. Those will be, the usual. Today's reviews going up at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. respectively on those games. And then next week we have a few things coming up. First of all, we have the top 10 on Monday. Instead of a 2-back or not-to-back, because I am AWOL, we will have top 10 most funded games of 2022. Yes, it's late, but I never did one last year, so I actually think it's top 15. Top 15 most funded games of 2022. In general, I like looking at how crowdfunding did the past year. I just happened to not do it this past year, so now we have it instead. I'll do the 2023 one earlier next year. And then also later this week, we should be going up, I don't know for sure, but should be going up, a video of the oldest games in my collection. The games in my collection that have stood the test of time the most. They've been here for a long, long time. I believe it's the top 10 oldest games in my collection, with like 4 special guests, not people. Extra board games, because why not? But that should be going up later this week. And then lastly, the games on the table. Let's talk about the games on the table. We have the following. As usual, these are games that I hope to be playing within the next 7 days. We have The Witcher Old World, which I finally read the rules for. I mean, I played the prototype back in the day, but I never played the final version. So I hope to be diving into The Witcher Old World this week. We have Trailblazers, which I already started playing through, but I really enjoy Trailblazers. Spoiler to my upcoming review when it happens, but I really enjoy Trailblazers, and I want to just continue to dive into it because I want to do a 12x12 on this one, which will be the fastest 12x12 I've ever done, from how fast I got the game to how fast I do a 12x12. Although the video will actually have disclaimers about that as well. The nature of my 12x12 series is they're meant to be a deep dive into board games. And to that end, a 12x12 kind of consists of two things and a third sort of thing. The first thing a 12x12 consists of is a minimum of 12 plays of that game. The second thing it consists of is, regardless of whether I have 12 plays or not, meaning if I can have 20 plays, I don't care, I want to explore all facets of the game. Not necessarily every facet in combination. So for example, if there's like, 2 modes, I want to play both modes. I also want to play all the player counts, but I don't necessarily feel the need to play all the modes at all the player counts, if that makes sense, because the multiplication stuff can get crazy very quickly. But to that end, I want to explore every facet of a game before calling it a 12x12. The third aspect, which is what Trailblazers does not have, is longevity. This is not actually an inherent factor of my 12x12 reviews. By the way, all the stuff I'm going to be saying in my review for longevity when it happens, so you listen to it twice, I guess. But it's not an inherent requirement for my 12x12 reviews, but that's something that Trailblazers will be absent. Every 12x12 review I've done so far, just almost by the nature of the genre of what they are, have been games that I've had in my collection for anywhere from a year to 10 years or more. They are games that have stood the test of time. That's why I have 12 plays under my belt. In the case of Trailblazers, it might be in my collection for like a month by the time I do a 12x12 review, which is not the same that I usually have. And so I want to give that disclaimer that playing it a lot and trying it at all the various facets does not equate to, okay, great, but has it stood the test of time? I don't know that yet, so there's going to be a little bit of disclaimer there, but I'm still going to do a 12x12 review just with a disclaimer. And then lastly, we have Emerge from Pandasaurus Games. This one actually, the art on this game is not doing it for me. I'm not pulled in by this art at all, on either the cover or the components. Not pulling me in the slightest, but I am intrigued by the game despite myself, because art is not the only thing in the game. I just don't care about the art. The gameplay sounded interesting, so I have Emerge right now, and I will be hoping to dive into that this week, along with these other 2 games. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call it. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I appreciate you being here, and as always, I hope you have a good one.